Imagine being forced into a life you never chose, not just as a slave, but as a tool for breeding. This was the reality for Barta, a story that echoes through time. In the annals of history, the dark shadows of slavery cast a long, oppressive silhouette, and within that darkness, there are tales that pierce the heart with their cruelty. One such story is that of Bata, a man born into bondage in an era where human lives were mere commodities. Bata's early life was marked by hardship and servitude, but his fate took an even more harrowing turn when his owner, driven by greed and devoid of humanity, chose to exploit him in a profoundly disturbing manner. Bata was forced to engage with countless women, his master's sinister plan being to increase his slave holdings through the birth of more children destined for servitude. This exploitation of Barta was not just a violation of his freedom, but a grotesque abuse of his very being, reducing a man to a mere instrument of reproduction. As we delve deeper into Barta's life, consider the immense personal and ethical violations he suffered. Controlled, manipulated, and exploited, Barta's life was not his own. His master's plan for him was cruel and unusual. In the dark corners of history, where human beings were reduced to mere instruments of labor and reproduction, Barta's story unfolds, a grim tableau of exploitation under the guise of economic efficiency. Barta's master, a figure shadowed by greed, devised a cold strategy to multiply his wealth. He saw in Barta not a man, but a resource, an asset to be used to expand his slave holdings. The plan was stark in its simplicity and brutality. Use Barta to impregnate as many women as possible, thereby increasing the number of slaves without the cost of acquisition. This breeding program, devoid of any regard for human dignity or consent, forced Barta into relationships with countless women, relationships devoid of choice, love, or even basic humanity. The physical toll on Barta was immense. To be used in such a manner is a form of violence, a relentless assault not just on the body but on the spirit. Yet the psychological impact was even more profound. Imagine the weight of knowing your children, born from such forced encounters, would inherit the chains of slavery, bound to the same life of servitude as their father. This knowledge hung heavy on Bata's heart, each day a reminder of the cruel cycle he was powerless to break. Moreover, the women involved were equally victimized, treated as mere vessels in this grim enterprise. They, like Bata, had no say in their futures or the futures of their children. Each forced relationship was a violation, a theft of what little autonomy they possessed. As we reflect on Bata's harrowing role, it becomes clear that his existence was orchestrated as part of a larger, more sinister operation. His life, and the lives of those he was forced to connect with, were manipulated by a master who viewed them as commodities. Bata's story isn't just a personal tragedy, it's a chilling example of how slaves were viewed as property, not people. Bata's story also intertwines with the lives of numerous women, each a victim in her own right. As we delve deeper, we find a narrative not just of a man exploited, but of many women, each facing her own profound struggles. These women, brought from different backgrounds and coerced into a life they never chose, shared a common fate. They were not seen as individuals, but as tools in a breeding scheme designed to increase the wealth and power of a ruthless master. This master viewed human lives as assets, measuring their value only in terms of potential offspring who would also serve him. Imagine the internal conflict and the emotional turmoil these women endured. Stripped of their autonomy, their bodies became battlegrounds for control and dominance. The psychological impact of such treatment is immense, leading to a life shadowed by trauma and a sense of perpetual loss. Their interactions with Barta too were complex. While he was also a victim, their relationships with him were shaped under the worst circumstances, devoid of choice or affection. Each encounter was a reminder of their lack of freedom, a painful echo of their reality. Furthermore, the societal implications of their situation were profound. These women, once mothers, found their children also bound to the same cycle of servitude. The maternal bond, typically a source of joy and connection, was overshadowed by the knowledge that their children's futures held the same bleak servitude. In moments of solitude, some of these women whispered stories to their children, instilling in them a sense of identity and worth beyond their enforced roles. They nurtured resilience and hope, small acts of defiance against the oppressive forces that sought to define their existence. Their resilience, though quiet and often unnoticed, was a form of resistance. Each day they endured, they preserved pieces of their humanity against overwhelming odds. These women, like Barta, were trapped in a cycle of exploitation, their pain and suffering a testament to the inhumanity of their master. From the union of despair, children were born, children who never knew freedom from the day they opened their eyes. These were the offspring of Barta, a man coerced into fatherhood under the cruelest circumstances, and numerous women, themselves ensnared in a relentless cycle of exploitation. These children, woven into the fabric of servitude, inherited a legacy of sorrow. From infancy, their paths were etched not with the milestones of growth and discovery, but with the harsh realities of bondage. They grew up in a world where familial bonds were secondary to the demands of their master, who viewed them not as human beings, but as assets. The identities of their parents were often shrouded in mystery, the connections obscured by the conditions of their conception. Mothers and fathers were not sources of wisdom and love, but mere instruments in a grander scheme of forced reproduction. The children's lives were devoid of the usual joys and lessons learned through parental guidance. Instead, they were taught to labor, to obey, and to survive. Despite these grim beginnings, the spirit of resistance that lingered in their bloodlines sometimes sparked a faint glow of defiance. Whispers of freedom and dreams of escape fluttered through their minds, though often suppressed by the reality of their chains. These children, born from systematic abuse, grew up in the shadows of bondage, their futures predetermined by their master's greed. Amid the darkness of his life, Bata's spirit of resistance flickered, a quiet defiance against his brutal reality. Bata, a man bound in the chains of servitude, found himself in a grievous situation, compelled to father countless children under the oppressive hand of his master. Yet within this grim narrative there were moments, subtle yet profound, where Bata's will to resist manifested. One of the earliest recorded acts of defiance was Barta's covert attempts to educate himself and the children born from this enforced union. By whispering stories of freedom and teaching them the little he knew, Bata planted seeds of liberation in their young minds. This was no small feat. Each word of hope was a quiet rebellion against a system designed to suppress such aspirations. Moreover, Bata occasionally feigned illness to disrupt his master's breeding plans, buying precious moments of respite for himself and the women involved. These acts, though small in isolation, cumulatively painted a picture of a man unwilling to succumb entirely to his fate. There were also rumors, never fully substantiated, that Bata tried to escape. These tales, whispered amongst the slave quarters, served as a beacon of hope for others, illustrating that the desire for freedom was as natural as the air they breathed. The impact of Bata's resistance extended far beyond his lifespan. His story, passed down through generations, became a symbol of the human spirit's indomitable will to resist subjugation. Historians and scholars intrigued by his tale have pieced together accounts from various sources presenting Bata not just as a victim but as a beacon of quiet resistance. In the broader scope of history, Bata's legacy serves as a poignant reminder of the complexities of human exploitation and the resilience required to oppose it. His life, though marred by unimaginable hardships, also encapsulates the enduring hope and strength found in the darkest of times. Bata's legacy is complex, marked by both the scars of exploitation and the quiet strength of resistance. Bata's story is centuries old, yet the shadows of slavery still loom large over modern society. How far have we really come? As we delve into the murky waters of history, we find that the ripples caused by the stones of slavery still disturb the surface of today's societal norms. It's crucial to recognize that the chains of past injustices, like those endured by Bata, have not entirely been broken. Instead, they have morphed into less visible but equally pervasive forms of inequality and discrimination. Consider the socio-economic disparities that are starkly prevalent across the globe. These are not merely remnants of a bygone era, but are actively perpetuated by structures built during the time of slavery. The wealth gap, access to education, and employment opportunities are often still aligned along the lines drawn by historical divisions of race and class. Moreover, systemic racism, a direct descendant of such historical practices, continues to thrive in many societies. It manifests in racial profiling, disparities in criminal justice, and unequal housing and healthcare access, subtly echoing the segregation and exploitation of the past. In reflecting on these contemporary issues, it becomes apparent that the legacy of slavery is intricately woven into the fabric of our modern world. It influences how communities interact, how resources are allocated, and how individuals are perceived and treated. As we remember Bata, let us ask ourselves, in what ways does the legacy of slavery continue to influence our world today?